Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. All right. Happy hump day, guys. It's Wednesday, right? Yeah, it is Wednesday. Happy hump day. Hope you're doing well for the first half of your week. And I hope that it continues to do well. Or if it hasn't been so great, I hope it gets better. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a pretty decent week. I am. Today, I was this close to rescuing a kitten and bringing it home with me. This close. It was like super little by itself. I was with Indy. Indy was, of course, the one to discover it. And I was taking her to the pet store to get more food for Indy and for Holmes and Astra, for our cats. And I saw this tiny little thing. It was so little. And so I was like, okay, I'll get some wet kitten food for it. Maybe it's hungry, just sort of figure out this whole situation. And on my way back, I'll give it. And when I came back, it was gone, unfortunately. But there was a negligible chance that kitten could have ended up coming home with us. But anyway, I don't know. I'm sure that it was somewhere nearby. Its mama was probably nearby or something like that. Something along those lines. But if I see it again, I don't know. We'll see. Anyhow, how are you guys doing? How are you? I see real Laura B's in the chat. Hey Laura, how's it going? And I also see that we've got some folks saying from elsewhere around the States and around the world, in fact. So we've got someone from London. Hey, April Fox. Traveling Doc from India. Hello, welcome. I see Cheerful Bacon from Blaine, Washington, right? Washington. Yeah, Wisconsin is WI. Okay. Anyhow, I hope you guys, here we go, Nebraska. Hello from Finland. We've got, you're in the South right now. Okay, cool. Nice. Anyway, North Carolina. Great. Love it. Seattle, Washington, Livonia, Michigan. I was going to say Wisconsin. Anyway, New Jersey. All right, cool. We've got so many folks here. Oh, from Denmark too. How's it going, guys? How's it going? I'm so happy. So happy to see all of you here and to talk about this cases. It's really a series of cases because there is a whole series of events that are, when you listen to them, they seem so incredibly unbelievable. And it's really one of those cases where truth is stranger than fiction, because if somebody wrote this, people would be like, that's insane, right? Either it's like the Wolf of Wall Street, or it's some kind of like Quentin Tarantino movie that is totally exaggerative and, no one would ever possibly believe. And like, that's the style of it, is like exaggerative, right? You know what I mean? But this, there's a lot in this particular case. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Alec Murdaugh case. I know his name is Alexander. I want to say Murdaugh. That's how I want to pronounce it, but I have heard it pronounced Murdaugh. And apparently he goes by Alec, not Alex, even though he spells it Alex. So it's all confusing. And for reasons that I can't quite grasp, it really frustrates me. So I try to keep that in mind as I go through this. If I slip into saying Alex instead of Alec, my apologies. I try to keep it accurate as much as possible. But I'm going to approach this as if people have no idea, because I am relatively new to discovering this particular case, or cases, as I said. And it is a wild story, as I mentioned. There are so many different complexities involved in this particular case. The trail just winds around incredibly as we go through. So I'm going to try to keep it as straightforward as possible, but in a way that can be in a way that can still be, I don't know, you guys can still follow along with it. Basically, TLDR is this. Around the Murdaugh family, there have been, in and around the Murdaugh family, there have been 5 deaths under strange circumstances, strange, unusual circumstances that are all being investigated. There also are allegations of murder for hire fraud, insurance fraud, or not actually murder for hire, I think more like suicide for hire. There's also embezzlement allegations for embezzling client funds out of a law firm. And all of this is coming from a family that has been very well established for generations in South Carolina. I have lived in South Carolina, but it was for literally like 1 year. It wasn't nearly enough time to really live in the local environment. It was in between undergrad and law school, so I was more there to be with family that was stationed there in South Carolina for a bit. So I do have some familiarity with South Carolina, but not quite enough to feel like I would really understand this in the local culture. And as LLL says here, it's more like a legal dynasty. And that I think is correct, because from what I understand about this is that this is a family that has been not just like lawyers for generations, but they have not just run their own like firm for a long time, but they also have been um uh solicitors for a long time, which locally is in South Carolina, they have prosecutorial power. So they have for many generations been held that role of solicitor. They have also had they've also had a lot of connections with the police. And so my understanding based on the research that I've looked into and that I have come across, which I will give you guys the number one resource on this particular topic too, if you aren't already familiar, in just a second. But so my understanding is that over the years, they have amassed a lot of power through influence with the law, as well as ties with the local police, as well as just through wealth. There's been quite a bit, quite a bit. And so when you have a case where a lot of these strange things are happening, you have a lot of people that don't necessarily want to speak up initially. Sometimes you could have issues with corruption. You can have issues with conflicts of interest. There's a lot of things that can go awry if you have a family that's not just well connected, but then also things are going in a negative direction, right? People are not exactly fully healthy with their habits and the things that they're doing. Maybe they're getting into drugs and other issues and cover-ups and corruption. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? Do you catch my drift? Anyway, let's get into it. So let me first. We'll do some photos here. So this is the Murdaugh family. On the far right, you have Alex Murdaugh, the father, of course, and in the middle you have his wife, Maggie Murdaugh. And in the middle you have his 2 children, Alex and Emma. And Maggie Murdaugh. Between them, you have Paul Murdaugh, and then the last one on the far left is Buster Murdaugh. So at this point in time, only two individuals from this photo are living. Maggie and Paul, the two in the middle, are both deceased. And Alex Murdaugh is actually has just been indicted for their murders. We'll start with that. But to get to that point, we have to go back to 2015. It's a long and winding road, like I said. Austin SA says, thanks for covering this. This case is so insane. I can't look away. Do I get a shout out for being the first vote for this one? Absolutely. And thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, no, I know a lot of people were super interested in this case. And I know that this was one of the big ones to cover, according to folks on Twitter, on YouTube, elsewhere, pretty much everywhere that I polled people. This case or this story was one that people were like, we need to hear more about this one. So, okay, starting with July 2015, there's an individual named Stephen Smith who was found dead like 10 miles from the Murdaugh home in South Carolina. Apparently, he was found on the side of the road. There have been issues with the manner in which they decided to investigate his death. His mother has been pursuing reopening of the investigation of his death for a very long time. Some important notes about this is that he was an openly gay young man in South Carolina, and there have been whispers, but I don't know if there's been any sort of substantiation. I want to try to keep things to concrete fact, things that have been filed, things that have been put into court papers and whatnot. I want to keep things as concrete as possible. But there have been whispers that possibly there's a connection between him and one of Alex Murdaugh's sons. So a potential relationship of some sort. I don't know what kind of relationship that would be or what. But anyway, and also I just noticed in the chat. Okay, so yes, one of the biggest resources here on this particular case, before I get any further, is Mandy Matney has a podcast, which I have linked in the description below. She's been investigating. She's a journalist that has been investigating this case for literally years. So if you are interested in this case, if you want the nitty-gritty details, she has done a fantastic job of covering this for a very long time. And she also, I think, has a good understanding for the local culture and other sort of more local influences in this particular case. So if you are interested in this case, I really would recommend listening to her podcast and checking it out, because she gets into a lot of details and really digs deep into this. She's actually been talking to people in South Carolina and et cetera. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So July 2015, Stephen Smith is found and on the side of the road, and he his mother has been trying to get her or trying to get the police to investigate, trying to get basically that, trying to get it investigated, because the circumstances surrounding his death were very strange to her. And so anyway, so that's that for now. It doesn't seem related to Murdaugh just yet, but I think it's from what it sounds like, these things are all connected. Fast forward to February 24th, 2019. Then we have the Paul Murdaugh, the one who is now deceased, the second from the right there in that photo. He was in a boating accident with friends, and that boating accident involved a lot of alcohol. They were teenagers. Everyone involved was teenagers. I think it was like half a dozen of them or something like that. And I think that it happened at night. All of them, except for one person, came back from the boat at the end of the night. One was missing, and her name was Mallory Beach. Unfortunately, she was then found about a week later. That's Mallory Beach right there. She was found about a week later, deceased. There are other individuals who have since been injured. And as a result of this accident, there is a lot of litigation that has sort of sprung up out of this. There's I believe, a wrongful death case. There's also other litigation by other individuals who were injured on that particular evening. And there were criminal charges against Paul as a result for her death. The litigation was also very broad. The civil litigation, it wasn't just against Paul, it was against the owner of the boat, which I believe was Alex Murdaugh, as well as the individual who supplied an ID for alcohol, which would be Buster Murdaugh. It was, I think, also against the store that actually sold them alcohol. There's a lot of litigation that has come out of this. So after that, 2 days after that boating accident, there was also another individual who died 2 days afterwards, and her name was Gloria Satterfield. She, I believe, was the family housekeeper, and when she died, her manner of death has had a lot of questions around it and I think part of it is because of the fact that there apparently wasn't an autopsy that was conducted of her body. But I think that the manner of death, so when we're talking about how a person dies, there's several different manners of death that the coroner will label on the death certificate, either from natural causes or an accident or suicide or homicide. So homicide meaning that that it was at the hands of someone else, not necessarily saying that, not drawing a legal conclusion from that is what I should say. So for her, my understanding is there was a little bit of a switcheroo from her death certificate between her having died of natural causes and then her having died as a result of an accident. I think so. If I'm keeping my facts straight here, and if you are very familiar with the facts of this case and you know otherwise, let me know. But otherwise, I'm fairly certain that they had decided that not to do an autopsy. Interesting, because typically when you have someone dying of surprising circumstances, typically the practice is to perform an autopsy just to make sure that you actually find out how they died. Now, since then, there has been litigation over her death by her sons for her estate. And we'll get a little bit more into that. Now, that was February 26, 2019 was when she died. 2 days after that boating accident in which Mallory Beach died, the young lady. Then on March 29th, 2019, the estate of Mallory Beach sues a bunch of people. So that's when their litigation starts. So basically about a month long. Didn't take long for them to decide to sue for that. Then after that, June 7th, 2021 is when Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh were found on the family's hunting estate. Previously, before this point, now reminder, this is what, a year and a half after the boating accident, and after Paul had been charged with the death of Mallory Beach. Maggie apparently was estranged from Alec at that point. I'm not sure if they were in the process of divorcing or if they just were estranged. she was called to that lodge, which is like the family estate, right? Where I don't know how big this is particularly, but it apparently is a hunting estate. So my understanding is that it's very large. So she was called there by Alex Murdaugh, who apparently was, at least he said that he was going off to see his father who was dying and his mother who I believe had dementia or Alzheimer's. Saw some reporting that she had either texted or talked to a friend of hers like on the way there saying, this is weird. There's something that's going on here that's very strange. And so she was over by, I guess they had kennels on the lodge there. She was over by the kennels, as was Paul Murdaugh at the time that she was there. And both of them were found over by those dog kennels. Both of them had died from two different firearms. Apparently, she died at the hands of an AR-15, I believe, and then he died from wounds from a shotgun. So strange. Although they both were determined to have died at about the same time. Austin SA says the estate is about 1,800 acres. That would be quite large. So, yeah, that's I figured it was probably going to be pretty big. So at that point, Alex Murdaugh is apparently the person who found them on the estate. And then he called in the 911 call. And there are recordings of the 911 call. I have not yet listened to those, but I fully intend to. I just wanted to talk about this because I've been pretty much knee deep in this case, and I wanted to talk about it. But from what I've heard, the 911 call is very interesting to listen to. Alec became a person of interest in that case, but for a very long time wasn't charged, wasn't indicted for anything. Like I said, his alibi was that he was visiting his mother, visiting his father, and and previously what he had said was like the reason why he was calling his wife to come there was because he was basically saying, hey, my dad's on his way out, and you really should come and say goodbye or something along those lines. I don't know how that exactly fits with him being away to see his father and mother in some other location. I don't know if it's like right next door or how far these different things are versus the hunting lodge, the hunting estate. But also the death of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh was about a month before he, as in Paul, was supposed to be going to trial over the boating incident. So it's very interesting that is happening. And another thing that I forgot to mention, see, like I said, this case has so much detail as you go through it, that there's so much that even if you are going through notes, it is so easy to lose your it's very easy to lose your spot. But one of the things that has allegedly come about the DUI case and boating DUI, as well as the civil litigation that came out about it, is that apparently Alex Murdaugh is alleged to have had conversations with all of the different teens at the hospital after the boating incident, not long after the boating incident. And these conversations are supposed to have been, well, maybe not exactly above board, so to speak. To be more blunt, it's alleged that he basically went in and told all the teenagers, hey, you shut your mouth, be quiet, don't say anything to anyone, and okay, that's it. You're all going to keep your mouths shut. So, which would be one of the reasons potentially why there was such a long period of time between the boating incident and when Paul Murdaugh was actually charged for the boating incident. So a lot of people have remarked about how much time passed between those two. And I think part of that has to do with some issues of potential corruption, possibly connections with the solicitor's office, possibly, as well as these conversations with these other teens. I believe that those conversations with them have become part of a part of part of the litigation, part of the complaints in the litigation. So moving on then. So remember that June 7th, 2021 is when Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh died. 3 days later, Alex Murdaugh's father passed away. I'm not sure exactly what he died of, but it seems like that's the least suspicious death in this whole saga, it sounds like. Then you go to about 2 weeks later, on June 23rd, 2021. There is an investigation that is officially reopened into the death of Stephen Smith. This is after a lot of work and a lot of pushing by his mother, apparently. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED. Actually, I don't think South Carolina. I think it's the State Law Enforcement Division, SLED. SLED is what is the acronym for it. They said that they came out with a statement saying that they reopened it after the double deaths. So there's something about what happened with Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh that was a little bit suspicious to them, that somehow triggered something having to do with Stephen Smith's death, according to the statements that came out. Now, Smith's mother had said that she thought that this was some kind of a hate crime because of the fact that he was an out homosexual man living in the South. So I don't know if it's actually being investigated as a hate crime or if that's still just something that his mother's pushing for and has not been able to successfully push for, I suppose. So then we have the embezzlement issues coming up. So September 3rd, 2021, Alex Murdaugh suddenly resigns from his law firm, a firm that he's a named partner in, a firm that he probably has had his family connected to for generations at this point. The firm is called Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Ellsroth, and Detrick, PA, or PMPED. And they basically came out with a statement saying that he stole from the firm and that he did things that were not according to what the firm believes in, and that they basically were removing him from the firm forthwith. Now, since then, he has also been under investigation by the South Carolina Supreme Court, essentially the state bar, and most recently, he has actually been entirely disbarred. So this is somebody who comes from generations of lawyers, generations of not just lawyers, but generations of very well-connected lawyers who were essentially using their connections through the law for wealth and power and more wealth and power, from what it sounds like. And now he's been formally disbarred. And with all of the litigation that has come out throughout all of these other things that have happened, the state bar has in their order disbarring him, basically said, so just because we're disbarring him at this point, that doesn't mean that this is the end of our our role here in his story. So this doesn't limit us from doing other things in case we basically learn new things and feel the need to say to go over more. In other words, basically, if the civil litigation that is going on having to do with the sorts of things for which his firm separated themselves from him or separated him from them, however you want to put it. Assuming that the litigation falls through or other investigations fall through, the South Carolina Supreme Court is basically also still maintaining the, you could say, the opportunity to issue more sanctions and other penalties against him in order to basically for the benefit of the people that have been harmed here. So it's a very interesting situation with the not just the bar, but then also with all of the other investigations and the other lawsuits that have been going on. Okay, so we're fast forwarding to he's no longer a lawyer, but now we're going to go back in time, back to when his firm just removes him. And basically what it turns out is that he was allegedly money laundering, allegedly using certain connections with various entities that were connected to the firm's finances to pocket money for himself. And that money was supposed to not just go to the firm, but also go to clients. So we have an issue where someone has been defrauding clients of literally millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars. And this is also a firm that has been apparently representing either him or his son in some of the litigation that resulted from the boating incident. So we later see them also removing themselves from counsel or as counsel in these other matters, because obviously then there's conflicts of interest that have arisen because they are opposing from his from his interest in other ways and other matters that are still relatively connected. So yeah, there's a lot there, but it doesn't end there. Now, on September 4th, 2021. So remember, September 3rd, 2021 is when the statement came from the firm saying that they were separating themselves from him. On September 4th, 2021, the next day, Alex Murdaugh was shot in the head on the side of the road. Now we know that his story doesn't end there because he is obviously in jail, and he is, like I said before, he has been indicted for the murders of his wife and son at this point. So there's a lot of questions about the circumstances having to do with him getting shot in the head and then surviving it. But from what it sounds like, there also are allegations that he's been charged. He's been charged for a fraudulent suicide for hire scheme, wherein he was trying to defraud the insurance company by making his death look like a suicide and having the $10 million go to his remaining son, Buster. So remember, this is after his wife and his other son have died, and he's got all this litigation that has come his way for millions of dollars from not just Mallory Beach's family, the young lady who died on the boat, but also the other individuals who were injured from the boating incident. And then he's got I supposedly maybe possibly saw the writing on the wall at the firm, knew what was coming, and decided, you know what, I don't think that I can keep these things together, and decided to put this plot together. Possibly. That's what it seems like. Now, like I said, there's a lot of questions around this, and you want to be analyzing things in as factual a way as possible and as concretely a way as possible. We want to be able to rely on concrete facts. But so to this point, Matthew Giannotti, usually if it's unalive, the family does not get the insurance claim. Well, the thing is, it seems like the plot didn't exactly work out because it wasn't by his own hand. The firearm was held by another individual that was, what was his name? I have it written down here. Is it Curtis Edward Smith Stevens? Something like that. Let me see here. Hang on. I have a lot of pages of notes here. I'm sure someone in the chat will be able to maybe say before I get to it. Okay, yes. Curtis Edward. Yes. Okay, Curtis Edward Stevens. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay. I see that. Yes. So one of the other things that has come out about this individual in the time that has passed is that he also allegedly was supplying Alex Murdaugh with drugs over the years. So what kind of drugs were they? They seem to have been very heavy ones from what has been alleged. How long this habit has been there, I don't know. How often? I don't know. Did that have an impact in his marriage? I don't know. There's a lot of questions. But there's been a lot. So the individual that shot him has also spoken with the media, and Alex Murdaugh has, I think this is one of the things that he actually confessed to was the suicide for hire scheme. He's confessed to a few of these things here. So 2 days after getting shot on September 6, 2021, he leaves the hospital and then goes to a rehab facility in Florida, which is it's again, getting shot in the head, you would think would result in a bit more medical care than that. So I'm not really sure exactly how that works. Okay. But anyway, his law license was suspended not long after that, like a couple days later. September 13th, the state opens an investigation into the money issues. Money issues having to do with clients and whatnot. September 14th, 2021, that was when he confessed to the assisted suicide scheme. And apparently it was to ensure the $10 million payment to his son. And the Curtis Edward Stevens is later charged with attempted assisted suicide and with the shooting, and also conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. And there's also more indictments and charges that are filed against Alex Murdaugh as well for the insurance fraud and for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and many, many more malfeasances. September 15th, 2021, investigations were opened up into the death of Gloria Satterfield and the handling of her estate. So there was litigation that had already been filed in her estate by her sons. One of the things, as if it's just not enough to have like insurance fraud, defrauding clients and all this kind of stuff. Allegedly, what happened at the funeral of Gloria Satterfield, Alex Murdaugh was at the funeral and went to the sons at the funeral. Didn't bother to wait until later, apparently, and allegedly pressured them into hiring a particular individual to represent them. Now, the circumstances of her death were she died on Alex Murdaugh's property, and there's a possibility that it was a trip and fall over a dog, but that seems to be unclear. What is clear is that the Sons filed a wrongful death action, and they filed that technically against Alex Murdaugh. Now, he had insurance for his property, so what they were going to be receiving from that was a settlement check from his insurance provider. Somehow they never ended up getting the insurance money from the insurance company. So somewhere along the way, there was either Alex Murdaugh pocketed it somehow, or the Satterfield Sons attorney pocketed it. I'm not exactly sure where that money ended up going, but apparently it did not end up in their pocket. And the other detail about this particular attorney that had been hired by the Satterfield Sons per the request by Alex Murdaugh was also a very, 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 very good friend of Alex Murdaugh. The Sons apparently didn't know that. Alex Murdaugh didn't tell them, and neither did the attorney, Corey, what's his last name? Corey something or other. Oh, shoot. I knew I should have. Corey Fleming. Okay, that's his name. So yeah, they had hired him at the behest of Alex Murdaugh, who is an attorney and has professional responsibility requirements. And the fact that they're like best friends is probably something that should be said, because that could be potentially a conflict of interest if you are very good friends with them. Now, the thing is, it doesn't even have to be a conflict of interest in order to give rise to a responsibility to divulge that information to his own clients, Corey Fleming's, that is. It's enough, I believe, it's enough to say that there's a potential conflict of interest that would require him to say it. And the thing about that is that attorneys need to be able to give their clients the ability to at least have a conversation about something, to say, hey, look, like, any client would want to know, right? If your attorney that you have hired is super best friends with the opposing party, you would want to know about that, right? What's the nature of this relationship? How far does it go back? What kind of stuff do you guys get into? Like, do you normally get into these sort of relationships with him where he's on the other side of the ledger? Like, what exactly does this mean for our rights? Now, the thing is, if you are a client in that situation, you at least want the ability to investigate into that. But they were not given that opportunity, apparently. So since then, Corey Fleming has also, I believe, had his license suspended. I think in relation to his actions related to the estate of Gloria Satterfield. So there's investigations that have been opened up on September 15th, 2021 into her death and into the handling of her estate. Her sons also file a civil lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh and Corey Fleming. I believe Corey Fleming at this point. If not him, then maybe the other attorneys at his firm. They allege that Alex Murdaugh told them to which attorney to hire and how to handle the wrongful death lawsuit. And the insurance that had been allegedly paid out, or the settlement that had been allegedly paid out by the insurance provider, was apparently around $500,000. That's a lot of money to not see when you think that you're going to be seeing it, right? Yeah. Then on September 16th, 2021, Alex Murdaugh was charged with insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit the fraud, filing a false police report, and then he's arrested, brought to court. His attorney argues to the court that he shouldn't go to jail. He should go to rehab instead because he has an opioid addiction. The court agrees, and he's released and goes to rehab in Florida. On September 20, 2021, there's another lawsuit that is filed involving the boat crash. So this is just another one, just another example. This one was filed by Connor Cook on September 20th. So then in October, more stuff. You've got the firm that is suing Alex Murdaugh for the funds that he has embezzled from the firm and from the clients. Then you have Corey Fleming's law license getting suspended back in October. Then you have the South Carolina Supreme Court disbarring him, disbarring Alex Murdaugh, I should say. And let's see here. And in between all of these, we've got so many progressive indictments against Alex Murdaugh. At this point in time, currently, the last that I saw was that he was at 17 indictments against him and 85 criminal charges. That's a lot. That's a lot. For someone who has, for one of those, he was placed at $7 million bail, and he wasn't able to pay that bail to be released. So he's been in prison since January, I believe. January, December. Let me see here. Let's see. Okay. Yep. December 13th, 2021. He was placed in custody, and the bond was set at $7 million. And he was not able to meet that amount. So he's been in custody since last December. And he, in the meantime, has had more and more indictments that have been stacked on top of one another. And that has ultimately resulted in him getting, like I said, disbarred earlier this month. And also, let me just see here. Then about almost 2 weeks ago, on July 14th, 2022, he was indicted for the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. Previously, he had just been a person of interest. So it seems that they were quietly putting these pieces together, while at the same time putting other charges on him progressively higher and higher. And most recently, his attorney, which, by the way, with all of these charges and the defense for all of these lawsuits worth millions of dollars, one of my biggest questions here is how his attorneys are going to be paid. Because I look at a case like this. And I really wonder, that's a lot of work to be putting into a particular case. And you know that a lot of this is financial stuff. So my supposition is that he is probably going to end up being gutted of all of the wealth that he has and that he's amassed over generations. So how are these attorneys going to be paid? So one of the things that I noticed is that his attorney has recently requested a speedy trial. And so he has requested for the trial to go forward in 60 days. which is very fast. Homicide cases usually take a very long time, much longer than 60 days. And that's a lot. But the thing is, this particular case, like I said, they've been putting these other indictments on him over the months, over the past, like, I guess, year or so. And so he's been in jail since December. He hasn't exactly been a flight risk. They have been arguably putting together a case up until this past week. My guess, I wouldn't be surprised if his attorney requested a speedy trial, because he probably had some kind of a conversation with him to say, hey, look, I'm representing you and this is crazy and you have a lot going against you. And I know, you and I both know, that your wealth is not going to end up what it is right now. And so it's probably best for you and for me and for everyone else involved if we take this as a speedy trial, because how much more do you have to gain by having this drag out longer? Possibly. I don't know. There's still so much here, though, that has not been put out to the public, even with those indictments having to do with his wife and his son. The whole thing is so incredibly tragic. It really is so tragic, because it's just looking at this case from a sort of bird's eye view. You get the sense that this is a family that has been sort of, I mean, it's hard to feel bad for people that are in positions of power and wealth, but I keep thinking of a very common quote that you hear, especially in the United States. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. When you have a family that has gotten very used to having power and wealth and influence over generations, things can get wonky to a human being. Like the things that are normal inhibitions or limiters for most individuals to sort of keep them in check, when the powers that normally keep a human being in check are less relevant to someone or less relevant to a group of people, it can cause your human behavior to get a little bit wonky. And it can mean that the longer certain behaviors go unchecked, the uh the crazier the behavior can get. So this is a nuts case. It's crazy. And if this is going to trial in 60 days, definitely going to be following this one. I did see a question in the chat asking if I was going to be live streaming this trial. I may very well. I'm still, like I said, it's early days. I don't want to commit to the case right off the bat, since I'm just getting into it. And I figure there are some folks that have been in this space for a bit longer, but I just might. This is such an interesting case. Let me know in the chat, in the comments, if you would be interested in seeing a Legalbytes live stream of this case, if there are in fact cameras in the courtroom for this one. I just might end up live streaming this one. but I'll need to think about it just for a little bit. Anyway, what do you guys think about this case? Are you interested? I mean, not just the trial, a potential trial stream, but are you interested in more updates about this case? Keeping up with it? Let me know. I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat. Yes, abso-freaking-lutely. Yep. So, yep. Thank you guys. Yep. Yes, more updates. Okay. I think we've got a lot of interest in this particular case. So, it's a very complex case that has a lot of vines that really intersect with one another. And those are not entirely clear to the public at this point, even still, even with Stephen Smith somehow being connected to the Murdaugh murders, um, with Paul and Maggie. Somehow there's a connection there with, Gloria Satterfield and the issues related to her estate and the manner of her death as well. There are so many things that are being investigated that still have a lot of questions. There's a lot of, you could say, clouds over this cluster of cases, but it is a massively interesting story about human behavior, like I said. Um, but it is also tragic. So I want to keep that in mind too. And I should have said this at the start of this live stream too, that no matter how you go about this, there are a lot of people that are grieving the deaths of some loved one, either a friend or a family member or someone, very close to them in some form or another. And it's just absolutely tragic, right? Like I feel for Buster Murdaugh. He has lost essentially his entire family through this whole process. I don't know, it would be interesting to find out what, if anything, sorry for the turn of phrase, but what he knows, if anything, of what happened. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of grief that he has had to go through over the last, I mean, however many, at least 2 years. I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing don't feel bad for Buster, but regardless of I don't know. I still feel bad for all of the people that are involved, including individuals that have done wrong things, because usually the things that lead people to do wrong things is because they are living a life of suffering somehow. Anyway, um all right. This is basically about it, I think, for this one. We have done basically an overview of this particular case. There's so much more that can be gone into, so much litigation, both civil and criminal. So, um I'm going to keep researching, keep digging into this particular case, and I guess there's going to be more content on it as well. All right, guys. So, with that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And yeah, like I said, let me know what you think. All right. See you guys in the next video.